Ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming at you live from the home studio. And as promised earlier today, I've got Arlo Finch in the Valley of Fire by John August. Now, I said I was going to leave some reviews of books, do some book talks, and do some actual readings of books. And this is one of the ones that I'm actually planning on doing a reading of because this book is underrated. I don't know why more people don't look at this. This book is amazing. It's not Harry Potter, but it's up there. And it's a fairly new book. But I just looked on Goodreads, and this book has 1,500 reviews, and that's just not enough. I mean, come on, man. I think we can pump those numbers up. So this one is the hardcover. You can see it's available in my school library right here. Arlo Finch in the Valley of Fire by John August. And I'm going to read the inside cover for you right now. So listen up. First, it's got the Ranger's Vow. This book's all about the Rangers, and you'll learn more about them in a moment. Loyal, brave, kind, and true, keeper of the old and new. I guard the wild, defend the weak, mark the path, and virtue seek. Forest spirits, hear me now as I speak my ranger's vow. Man, that's powerful. I mean, I can just tell that this book is kind of like a compilation of like Harry Potter-esque, like fantasy mixed with Boy Scouts, it sounds like. And you know what? That's correct. So this book is really good. Here's the inside cover. Arlo Finch thought becoming a ranger meant learning wilderness skills like camping and knots. But upon arriving in the tiny town of Pine Mountain, Colorado, Arlo soon learns there's so much more. His friends Indra and Wu teach him how to harness the wild magic seeping in from the mysterious longwoods, a parallel realm of wonder and danger. Ooh. First, he must master the basics, including snaplights, thunderclaps, and identifying supernatural creatures. But Arlo Finch is no ordinary ranger, and this is no ordinary time. A dark and ancient force is sending threats into the real world. Okay, that's our world, by the way. And whatever it is, has its sights set on Arlo. Through perilous adventures and close calls, Arlo is awakened to his unique destiny. But the obstacles he faces will test the very foundations of the Ranger's vow. Loyalty, bravery, kindness, and truth. That's the inside cover of the book. Okay, I'm going to read chapter 1 for you tonight. The tagline, by the way, is, "Some trails lead to magic, some lead to danger." Wow. Okay. It's going to talk to me about the typeface and the author. I don't care about any of that. I rarely ever read the meta story information. So this book did come out in 2018. So that explains why it's not quite as popular as, like, say, a Harry Potter from the 90s. And it's not as good as Harry Potter. I mean, I'm not going to try to oversell it. Harry Potter is like the top, and every book is beneath that. And this book, it's not like the bottom. It's not the middle. It's like slightly between the middle and the top. You know, it's like somewhere right in here. If there's like an imaginary triangle, it's like right there. Okay. Chapter 1, Pine Mountain. It didn't look like a house at all. True, it had many things you expect to see in a house: shingles, windows, bricks, but they didn't seem to be arranged in a house-like way. Instead, the building slumped against the wooded hillside like a pile of debris left over from proper homes. To the left, a door hung 6 feet off the ground. No stairs beneath it. On the second floor, a blue plastic tarp stirred in the fall breeze, revealing the wooden skeleton of an abandoned room. The front door was hidden in the shadows of a sagging porch. From the back seat of his mother's car, Arlo took silent note of all the dangers he saw. Doesn't sound like a great place to live. His sister JC just said it. It looks like a murder house. Their mother switched off the ignition, unfastened her seatbelt. Arlo knew she was counting to 3. Mom counted to 3 a lot these days. I bet some of your parents are having to count to three a lot with all of you at home all the time for the next 4 weeks. Just get a little stressed. And they're like, "Oh, do I choke them? Or do I just breathe and count 1, 2, 3? Still angry, but don't need to smash them. Okay, here we go. We should be grateful it's a house." "I'm not sure it is," said Arlo. They'd been driving for 6 hours and 3 days before that, so at the very least it felt good to get out and stretch. The bright sun and cool breeze were refreshing, like jumping into a pool without getting wet. Okay. The smell of the air reminded Arlo of the year in Philadelphia when they got a real Christmas tree from the empty lot next to the gas station. Here, high in the Colorado mountains, everywhere he looked were Christmas trees, only much, much bigger. They swayed against the pale blue sky. Their mother unlocked the U-Haul trailer behind the car. "I need to pee," announced JC. "Me too," said Arlo. "Well, go inside," said their mother. "Your uncle's expecting us." That's something that in a lot of fantasy fiction literature or fantasy literature or just literature in general, authors don't often address. People don't usually evacuate their waste products, or at least it's not mentioned. But it just shows you this book is legit. It's like real, man. Because like they pee and like we pee. So it's like we're connected. Arlo followed his sister to the creaking front porch, past a rusted metal fence and stacks of lichen-covered rocks. JC was 15, sturdy, built like the woman that you would see throwing a shot put in the Olympics. Back in Philadelphia and Chicago, she spent most of her days in her room, watching videos on her computer or dyeing her hair different colors, emerging only for meals or with an exaggerated sigh. Teenage angst, man. It'll get you. Probably got some of you already. Arlo Finch had just turned 12, but he looked younger. He was small, with dark hair that never stayed put. His left eye was brown, and his right eye was emerald green. Heterochromia iridum was the medical term, which made it sound like a magic spell or a disease, but it wasn't either one. "It's just how things are," his mother said. "Like how some people have green eyes and others have brown. You have one of each." Some teachers assumed his mismatched eyes were the reason Arlo had a hard time reading, but doctors said his vision was just fine. It was Arlo's brain that sometimes had trouble with words. We've all been there. Still, he could read the sign on the front door. "Solicitors will be shot and stuffed." That might be more frightening than like beware of dog or visitors may be shot, because it's not just saying that they're going to kill you, but they're going to kill you and they're going to mutilate your corpse and like turn it into a taxidermied item for like their parlor. And that somehow is just more disturbing than just regular old murder. I would not knock on that door, I don't think. JC knocked. The door slowly swung open. It had been unlocked the whole time. "Uncle Wade?" she called softly. No answer. "Hello," said Arlo, not any louder. The house beyond the door was messy, but not really murdery. Peering in from the porch, they could see stairs leading up to the second story, each step cluttered with books and boxes and bits of scrap metal. To the left of the living room had 3 sagging sofas and an upside-down rocking chair. To the right, a dining room filled with 15 stuffed animals. Not the cuddly type you give a child, but the kind that used to actually be living creatures, like you see on field trips to the Natural History Museum. Arlo spotted eagles, foxes, raccoons, all frozen in mid-action. How was my impression? I feel like that was pretty solid. Like I was taxidermy for a moment. I felt it, like in here. On second thought, the house was maybe a little bit murdery, but JC stepped right in. "It's trespassing," said Arlo in a whisper. "Mom owns the house," she said, crossing the dining room and pushing through the swinging door. Arlo supposed JC was technically right. According to their mother, the house had been specifically left to her when their grandparents had died, but Uncle Wade lived here, and he always had. It was his sign on the door and his dead animals on the table. Sentences you didn't think you'd have to use. That's his dead animal, or those are his dead animals on the table. Okay. The kitchen was dark and cluttered, and 5 open cereal boxes lined up on the counter. A dead plant hung over the sink. Dishes were stacked in a few inches of greasy water. The bathroom was down one step from the kitchen, off the hallway. That looked like it had once been outside. Arlo stood at the bathroom door, shifting his weight from foot to foot, eager to get his turn after JC. Then he heard the creaks. That was my impression of the creaks. That's called being a Foley artist. You might want to look it up. I've got a lot of talents. Heavy footsteps made their way down the wooden stairs. As if suddenly blessed with X-ray vision, Arlo could imagine exactly where the feet were landing. The sounds changed. The thudding steps slowly crossed the dining room floor, and then, just as Arlo expected, the door from the dining room swung open, and who should be standing there but a man. Arlo hadn't anticipated what he saw. The man behind the footsteps didn't look exactly like a man, but rather more like a bear that had had most of its fur worn off. He wore thick glasses, sweatpants, and a giant t-shirt with a stain the shape of Wisconsin. Arlo was pretty good at geography. Although he never met him, Arlo was sure that this was his Uncle Wade. In the photos in his mother's album, a young Wade had this exact same tangle of red blonde hair. The way his uncle was squinting, Arlo wasn't sure he'd been seen. But then the bear man grumbled, "Morning." "It's 3 in the afternoon." Arlo meant it to be helpful, but worried that it sounded bratty. Uncle Wade pointed at the bathroom door. "Who's in there? Celeste?" Celeste was their mother. Arlo shook his head. "JC. You're Arlo?" Arlo nodded. He could hear the toilet flush. Water was running in the sink. "You get along with your sister, kid?" asked Uncle Wade. Most of the time." "You're lucky. My sister drives me crazy. Always has." Uncle Wade only had one sister, so he was clearly talking about Arlo's mom. This didn't seem like a promising start to their relationship. The bathroom door opened. Wade shooed JC out and shut the door behind him. Arlo was going to have to wait a little longer to pee. Awful. Now there's a little break in the action. The house only had the one bathroom, but there were plenty of bedrooms upstairs. JC claimed a room at the back of the house. It was dark and smelled wet, but the door had a lock and it worked. Arlo took the room at the front of the house that had been his mother's childhood bedroom. The flowered wallpaper had faded so much that it looked like dusty snowflakes. The bed springs squeaked, but the mattress was much softer than what Arlo had had in Chicago, or that fold-away in Philadelphia. The windows looked up out at the gravel driveway, the trees, and beyond that to the jagged snow-capped mountains in the distance. But the view was not why Arlo had chosen this room. He figured these windows would offer him the best chance of escape. If the house suddenly collapsed or caught fire, or, if a mountain lion entered through the creepy half-finished room at the end of the hall, he'd be able to get out more quickly. He could simply tie a rope to the radiator to lower himself to the ground. Failing that, he could probably survive the jump with only a broken ankle. This kid kind of sounds like a young Dwight Schrute from The Office. Like he's just got too many plans and they're just weird and outlandish. But bear with me, because this is going to get good. Well, maybe not this chapter, because this is just exposition information, but this story is going to get very good. A school psychologist once asked Arlo why he often imagined unlikely scenarios, like a tidal wave on Lake Michigan, or gravity suddenly reversing. Did he really worry about these things happening? "No," said Arlo, "because I'm prepared for them." He was only afraid of not being ready. Arlo's father was the same way, always prepared for contingencies and surprises. If you don't have a plan B, you don't have a plan at all. But ever since his dad left, a race to the airport without time for goodbyes, it was the unimaginable things that kept Arlo awake at night, the vague fears of terrible dangers he would never see coming. He didn't want to worry his mother and sister, so he worried for them. He took his job very seriously. Arlo decided he would need to learn the best knots for tying sheets into makeshift ropes, and if possible, obtain a whistle or an air horn to signal the rest of the family about the rock slide. He suspected that rockslide was the most likely danger based on the number of yellow danger falling rock signs they'd passed on the road to Pine Mountain. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across his room. The snowflake flowers of the wallpaper caught the light strangely, glistening a bit in the pink glow of dusk. Arlo wondered if he had adequately scouted the area directly beneath the window. What if it was covered with rusty iron spikes or broken glass or something? He carefully leaned over the sill, looking straight down. He was glad he had. 15 feet below the window grew a spiky bush. It wasn't a cactus like the one he'd fallen on Carlsbad or the yucca from Yuma, but it looked like something that would definitely hurt. He headed down to investigate. Arlo's mother had gone to take the trailer back to the rental place. His sister was locked in her room, unpacking and listening to music. His Uncle Wade was off in his workshop. So as Arlo inspected the spiky plant beneath his window, he was all alone. Until he realized that he wasn't. 15 feet away by the edge of the gravel driveway, a dog was watching him. Arlo assumed it was a dog anyway, not a coyote or a wolf, though he'd never actually seen either of them in person. The creature had a collar, which meant that it did belong to somebody. Arlo knew to be careful around strange dogs, but this one didn't seem threatening, only a little curious. Keeping his hands low and visible, Arlo slowly walked towards it. The dog's head tilted. His tail wagged. But as Arlo crossed some unseen line, the dog slowly backed away. "Oh, it's okay," said Arlo. "You don't have to be afraid." He knelt down and beckoned the dog closer. The dog suddenly turned its attention to an empty spot on the road, ignoring Arlo completely. It seemed to be staring at an invisible threat. It leaned back on its haunches, teeth bared. The dog barked, but it didn't make any sound. It was like a television with no volume turned on. The only way Arlo could recognize that it was barking was by the shaking in the dog's chest and the movement of its mouth. Arlo knew that there were some breeds of dogs, specifically Egyptian ones, that didn't bark, but he'd never imagined that it would be quite like this. The dog suddenly took off running after the unseen threat, leaving Arlo on his knees on the gravel driveway. Arlo found his uncle padlocking his workshop and asked what the dog's name was. "What dog?" asked Uncle Wade, confused. Arlo described the dog and the silent barking and how it ran away into the forest. "Oh, that's Cooper. You saw him, huh? He hasn't been around in a long time." "Who does he belong to?" asked Arlo. "He was ours, but that was years ago." "Did he run away?" "Nah, he died," said Uncle Wade. "He was pretty old, and dogs, well, they just don't live that long." Arlo spent a long moment making sure he had actually heard that correctly. He studied his uncle's face, looking for a trace of a smile or some hint that he might be joking. If he's dead, then how did I see him?" Uncle Wade clipped his keys back onto his belt. "Your mom didn't tell you any of this, huh?" Arlo shook his head no. "Guess you wouldn't remember anyway. Things are different in the mountains. Not bad, not good, just different. Gonna take you a while to get used to that. I suspect, but you'll come around." Hearing tires on the gravel, Arlo and his uncle turned to see the station wagon returning, this time without the trailer attached, the headlights sweeping across them. Uncle Wade continued, "For now, it's probably best you stay out of the forest, just in case." Arlo's mom got out of the car. "Would you help me bring the groceries?" she called. Arlo asked his uncle what was in the forest. "Again, it's not bad, it's not good. It's just dangerous if you're not ready for it." And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 1. Our next chapter is going to be chapter 2, Reasonable Questions. Remember, this has been me reading you Arlo Finch in the Valley of Fire by Mr. John August. This is an excellent book. If you prefer to read it on your own or get an audio version, it's sold online on Amazon for like $5 for the Kindle edition. I think the audio is a little more expensive because they always are, but the other ones are pretty manageable at like $11. and the reviews for it are really good. And I tell you, it's definitely worth reading. So if you need something to do to keep you a little occupied during our lockdown, Arlo Finch. That's all I got for you tonight. And typically, I wind up my videos by telling you what the drink of choice is for the night. Is this brought to you by LaCroix or coffee? But guys, I'm wearing green tonight. It's really showing off my red Irish heritage, my red beard, my green eyes. So the official drink tonight is off the record because this is an educational video. I can't tell you that I'm going to have a big frosty mug of water because you got to stay hydrated. Avoid coronavirus. You guys wash your hands and be safe. Peace.